This is Gardy with Clear Life Media. I'm here in studio at the Clear Life HQ with the guests. I'm going to have them introduce themselves, and we're going to find out everything that they have going on. Hi, how are you doing?
Good morning. And my name is Kim Hegwood. I'm with Your Legacy Legal Care. We're a law firm in the Houston, well, we're in the Clear Lake area right now. And then we have offices all over the city.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit before we started,
Yeah.
and you say offices, but y'all have a lot of offices. So we're in League City, Clear Life is, and then you have a Clear Lake office, but where are all your offices located?
We have one in the Galleria. We have one in Sugarland. We have one, we call it Arcadia office, but it's really more of the Memorial area until we move it. That's where it is right now. And then I have an office in Bay City.
Okay. What all do you offer? And who are you for? Who are your people that you're serving?
We do estate planning, elder law, probate, and guardianship, and that pretty much covers just about everybody. So somebody once asked me, when should somebody, come to see you? And I said, starting at 18.
Mm-hmm. And what are the kind of things that you, I guess, specifically do? Like even me, so I'm 39 years old. I have a family, a wife and kids, and both my parents are still here. But what kind of things should I be looking at or considering?
You should be planning, should have a plan. Absolutely have a plan. Uh, you and your wife should be thinking about, God forbid, if something happens to you during date night, who gets the kids?
Mm-hmm.
You should also be thinking about making sure that you have a plan in place so that it avoids the probate court when at all possible. And so you can do that. We recommend that parents that have minor children should always do trust planning, because I can take all your beneficiary designations and drop them into the trust. We can have trustees that manage your child's inheritance, make sure they're taken care of. If you go through the court system, a lot of times you have to do annual accountings where you wouldn't have to if you weren't in the court system. That eats up a lot of your child's money. And so because you have to have an attorney to do that. And so the goal is to give families the best plan that they can have so that it works for their family. And everybody's unique. They have different ideas about, how their kids are raised and things like that. And so we always tell people, you and your wife are the best people to raise your children. So you have to think second best. And hopefully it's somebody you can agree on, because I've had some parents that had a difficulty trying to
Mm-hmm.
agree on somebody. We also don't recommend that you name couples. You name one of the couple. And so that way, in case, God forbid, they get divorced, we don't want your children to be involved in a custody battle and things like that. But the goal always is to have a plan in place, update it often. As your kids are growing, you're going to learn a lot about your children. Are they good with money, not good with money? Do you like the people they married? Maybe you don't want them to ever inherit anything. So people come into the office with a lot of different ideas about how they envision their legacy for their family. And our job is to get it written in a way that's easy for them to understand and to make sure that it works when they need it with the least amount of problems.
So you mentioned a trust, and when I hear a trust, I think, man, that's for somebody who has like $1 billion, right? Who is it? I guess first, what is a trust, and who is it exactly for? Is it for everyone?
I think everybody, I mean, I think that it's possible for everyone to could have a trust. We use trust for a variety of different reasons. And there are people that come into my office and they don't need a trust. They just need maybe a will and and a life estate deed just to avoid probate. We use trust for parents with small children. We use trust for a lot of married people because it's easier to do trust than it is to probate. Also, when you're married, we can put things in there like remarriage provisions in case you pass. If your wife remarries, we may want some remarriage provisions in there to protect your children's inheritance. It's the best plan uh, for parents that have his and her children, because when you do will-based planning for his and her children, it's very easy to disinherit children. So, once you leave everything to the spouse, they remarry. If they leave everything to the new spouse, your kids don't inherit anything. And we've seen it in the office a lot. A lot of times we need the asset protection. So the trust splits when one of you passes. So maybe we need some asset protection for the second spouse. We do a lot of asset protection planning for clients that may need help with long-term care in the future. It prevents the spouse at home from not going broke, paying for long-term care, nursing home costs, or range anywhere from, from six to $15,000 a month, depending on the kind of care you have or need. And so the goal always is to try to help families do the best they can with what they have to make it last as long as they need it to, so that they're okay. And then if there's money left over for the kids, great. A lot of parents plan for things to be left over to the kids. And so, but our goal is just to make sure that they have the best plan that works for them and does what they want it to do.
How often should somebody, look at these things and update? Once they get something in place, I've seen, there's a celebrity or someone who passes, and there are the kids and the different marriages and stuff like that. And that, I mean, that happens, regularly, right? And it's like, well, they hadn't updated their will in, 20 years, right? And is there like a like a rule of thumb, I guess, where you should look at this every year, every 2 years, or is there? What do
We
you think?
recommend every 3 years. Usually, about 3 years is about when you have a lot of life changes. So maybe the kids are getting older, maybe they've graduated high school or college. Um, we recommend 3 years specifically always to update power of attorneys. Your financial power of attorney, the older it is, the harder it is to use. The entities don't want to take it. So if we can keep it current and up to date about every 3 years, clients usually don't have any problems using them. And so when you become incapacitated, somebody needs to be able to use that power of attorney, and we want them to be able to use it. Because if they can't, they're in guardianship, and that's cost families a lot of money,
Right.
to have to go down that route. It's very court controlled. I mean, you have to basically ask for everything you want to do in a guardianship. And it's unnecessary and it can be avoided with good, powerful power of attorneys. And I think it's one of the things we do really well, for our clients, especially our seniors, that we put a lot of extra stuff in ours to make sure that no matter what happens during their lifetime, they are able to be okay because that agent can do the things they need to do.
I know that this is a totally different, I guess, area, but like life insurance, I can see how that, there is some overlapping as far as like if somebody passes, is there, does that overlap at all? Is that something that you like work with, or like, hey, there's this money, where does it go?
Normally, if you're doing trust planning, we have the life insurance drop into the trust. That way, no matter who passes, it's in the trust. We can do something with it. The benefit of life insurance is, your wife's going to love this. The benefits of life insurance is if something happens to her, it's going to take a lot of money to replace her. I used to tell clients all the time, to replace your wife is going to cost $120,000 annually, because now you don't have anybody necessarily doing the housework, running the kids to extracurricular activities, doing the cleaning, doing all the stuff that your wife does. So her value is actually very high. So you're not going to be able to do the yard anymore because you now have to, you've got extracurricular activities. So you're going to hire all these people to replace her. So having life insurance is always a good thing. What we find is that some of the mistakes that clients make is they make their minor children contingent beneficiaries. And that's one of the worst things you can do, because depending on the age of that child, you're in guardianship, you're in probate court having to do annual accountings until that child turns 18. Or maybe we can push it to 25 with some special planning we can do in probate court. I can at least get it to 25, but I can't get it to any older. So it makes it really difficult without having good plans in place to make sure that your family's going to be okay.
Yeah, when you say they do annual like accounting, what are they at, like seeing if the how is the money being spent, or what do you mean?
Absolutely. So they want to know how much money came into during that year, how much money went out. Did you spend it all? Did you spend it in the wrong place? Do you have receipts? Because, oh my gosh, you got to have receipts for everything.
Is
And
that because, I'm sorry to interrupt, but is that because, based on the wishes of the person, they say they only wanted to spend it on certain things, like it's for school or for, whatever?
if you don't have a plan in place, the court decides what you get to spend money on. You have to request a monthly allowance, which says, hey, I can spend this much money on food. I can spend this much money on school supplies. I can spend, so it's very court controlled. You want to spend more than that? You have to go back to court and ask. You know who you have to pay to do that? An attorney, every time. I mean, don't get me wrong. We make a lot of money off guardianship for people not planning well, but it's not the way we want to do business. Our goal is to avoid guardianship as much as possible by doing better planning. And so our estate planning is probably one of the biggest things that we do in my law practice.
Okay. I was going to ask the percentage. So I'm assuming you represent people that didn't use the estate planning, in hindsight in court, trying to help them be able to use the money that their loved one wished to leave them, right?
Correct.
Yeah. How much of that is if a percentage of what y'all do? Just
What is estate planning or
yeah, estate planning versus like hindsight.
uh, uh, getting estate planning is about 65% of what we do. Guardianship in my practice is only about 5%.
Okay.
The rest of it is, probate and elder law and things like that. And so, our goal for our clients is to never end up in probate court doing a guardianship. So we send out, we remind them, every 3 years, you need to come in and update. Now, do they do it all the time? No. Life has a way of getting away from people. I think, my gosh, I've been practicing for 28 years. I don't know where the time went. It just seemed like yesterday I was, I was sitting in a, law school classroom, and then here it is 28 years later. So time has a tendency to fly pretty fast.
Yes. This isn't always an easy conversation. Like having that with your family or your loved ones. I was talking to my wife, hey, we should, do this. Um, I guess how should somebody approach this? Is there a preferred way, or like how does this, it's not an easy conversation. Nobody wants to think about not being here or without their loved ones, right?
It's always better to have the conversation when everybody's alive, well, and competent. It's a lot harder to have the conversation when somebody's sick or something occurs because people have a tendency to not want to talk about it if you're sick or things like that because in your head you're imagining your worst case, scenario. But while you're alive, well, and everything in life is good, you can laugh and talk about it. In my family, we talk about everything, and usually at the kitchen table, kind of
Mhm.
stuff. So there's never a topic that's never been discussed. So we've been always been that family. But I have a lot of clients that they're just the opposite. Mom and dad don't want to talk about it to the kids, or the kids don't want to have that conversation with mom and dad. And we tell them, you got to, how are you going to know what they want to do? How are you going to know if they can't stay home anymore? What are their options? How are you going to know if you have to make, serious medical decisions? What kind of decisions would they want you to make? And so it's really important to put those things in place so that so when the time comes, you don't worry about it. It's all taken care of. And it makes life so much easier when you never have to really have a lot of worry about what's going to occur.
What drew you towards law? You said 28 years, and it feels like yesterday. As I've gotten, I'm 39 years old, but I see that I'm like, wow, it's already almost the end of the year, right?
Yeah.
But what drew you towards wanting to be a lawyer and then serve in this specific field?
It's funny because I heard somebody ask my mother that one time. And my mother told them that she couldn't remember a time I didn't want to be a lawyer. And so, because there was never been anything else. I have a great undergrad degree, but it was just to get me into law school, because you have to have one of those, to get into law school. So, when I first got out of law school, though, I litigated, and I enjoyed it up until the time that I didn't enjoy it anymore. And at that point in time, I realized that I needed to really figure out what was going to be important. My grandparents I'd already gone through the process with them of taking care of them as they started to decline. Going through probate, with my grandmother first, and then with my grandfather, it was the probate from hell, family issues, which a lot of families have. And so it made it a lot more difficult. And as I was really thinking about, really reflecting on what my grandparents could have done better, they had a longtime attorney. He only did wills for them, no power of attorneys, things like that. So when I did them, my grandfather looked at them and slid them across the table and told me, I don't need that. It wasn't until he was sitting in the hospital after he had his first stroke, and I gave him his what I commonly call his come to Jesus meeting and explained to him who was going to make decisions for him because it wasn't going to be me. At that point in time, after we had that nice conversation, he told me to get my hiney, but not necessarily that word, home to, get his documents so he could get them all signed. But the attorney that he'd had for years, they had a problem. They went to that attorney, you know, and he didn't educate them enough so that they knew what they needed to have. So it really became kind of a mission to educate as many families as we could, because we want families to be able to make good decisions. And you make good decisions by getting a good education, knowing the pros and cons of each decision that you want to make. So it's really important to have someone that's able to do that. So we do as much education as possible.
Yeah. You have a lot of offices. So I know you've been, 28 years practicing law. How did that growth come to be?
I tell people I've been blessed. Um, and so, in the sense of we've had, because a lot of people as they get older don't want to drive. They don't want to drive across town to come to the, Clear Lake office. So, and I understand that. So that's kind of how the other office is. I have great referral sources, with financial advisors and CPAs, and their clients are in different parts of town. So it really, we started kind of migrating to go to them so that they didn't have to drive as far, so they could come to a closer office and still get the same excellent service that we give them in our main office in Clear Lake. And I think that's what really drove it at the time. Now we're just in this massive growth stage that's just kind of by accident. And so, but it's really become an opportunity to really grow and to really continue, our mission of educating as many people as we can, so that they don't fall into the same traps that my grandparents did when they were started to decline.
Going forward, is there more growth in the future, or what does that look like for you?
Oh, absolutely. And so our other offices are basically satellite offices. And so the goal in the growth, as we're growing, is to build standalone offices, just like I have the one in Clear Lake. And so that means they basically stand on their own. Everything is done, in that office. And so that's the goal moving forward.
What do you look for when you're building a team?
You look for a lot of different things depending on who you need. For attorneys, you want somebody smart that went to a very good law school. You hope that they have experience, because I think that's the one part I may not train well in. But you want someone that is compassionate. You want someone that enjoys spending time with people. Because for me, I love spending time with clients. I laugh and tell people I miss my grandparents. So spending time with other people's grandparents is a real, it's a real joy. Everybody should be so lucky. And so to have that, kind of opportunity. And you get to make a difference, I think, in people's lives to give them what they need.
Something else that came to mind is sometimes people feel like, well, they hear a lawyer and it's like, oh, that's going to cost a lot of money, and I can see how it'll save a lot of money in the end in court and stuff like that. But what would you say to somebody that says like, I don't even know if I can afford that?
I think that everybody can afford good planning. I think it comes down to how you pay for it. And I think it's really important for people to understand that they're worth good planning, because I think a lot of people don't think they're worth having a good plan. And so, we have options, we have payment options and things like that in the law firm, so because we want as many people to be able to move forward and take care of their stuff as much as possible. So we try to help them every way we can. But most people, if you really ask, if it's important to them, they always find the money. I mean, you think about in your life, if there's something you want, you do whatever's necessary to make sure you have the money. It works that way in estate planning as well. So it's just a matter of how important is it for people to really have a good plan in place and make sure that their family's taken care of.
Something that came to mind just now as you were saying that with the state planning, is that mainly dealing with money? Is it also dealing with things? Because I think about things and I'm like, man, I have, my granddad's guitar. I have all these. I have, different things that I'm not really sure who it would go to, and maybe like, well, if they continue down this path, then maybe this would go to this person, or maybe my wife has a piece of jewelry that she would like to go to this child or something like. Does it deal with this as well?
So when you think about estate planning, you're thinking about everything you have in life. It could be household furnishings, it could be sentimental things, family heirlooms, real estate, cash, life insurance, investment accounts, retirement. You just be thinking about everything you have in life, and it's going to be taken into account when you think about doing planning. We do a document called a memorandum of personal belongings. So it's a document that lets you kind of list out the things that the kids aren't going to fight over. If they're going to fight over, we want it in the trust, or in your will. We want it in a good legal document, that's enforceable. So there are a lot of things that you can do, and a lot of families have a tendency. I know that as I've gotten older, I'm trying to decrease the amount of stuff I have. And so, because it seems to collect a lot, it amazes me how much stuff you can accumulate in a short period of time.
Right. Can you remind everybody one more time all the things that you offer, and then who are these services for?
So we do estate planning, we do elder law, we do probate and guardianship, and they're basically for everyone. From the time you're 18 till to the time you pass. There's some kind of a plan or something that we can help you with during that process.
Is there anything else you'd like to share? Actually, before that question, how can somebody reach out to you? What's the best way for them to find out and have a conversation started?
The easiest thing to do is to call the office, and you can call the office at 281-218-0880. Somebody will be very happy to schedule you a complimentary consultation, so you can meet with one of our team to hopefully get you on the path to having a good plan in place, and making yours and your family's life very happy.
Is there anything else you'd like to share?
I just think that I just want to appreciate so much for you having me on the show, for sure. Absolutely. I think it's important to get the message out, for people to come in, get some planning done. We'd love to see you. Absolutely. We have a great team in place. There's not anybody I think you wouldn't like visiting with in my office. And so we encourage you to come visit and spend some time with us and see how you like it.
Thank you so much for making time today. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you as well.
This is Gardy with Core Life Media. Y'all be blessed.